hey, if you look up Jim's Art Studio, they have this beautiful Ukrainian sunflower. It's absolutely worth checking out. All the profits are going to go to help Ukrainian charity, so please check it out. It'll be great. All the links will be below in the description and probably here in the picture. But yeah, go help them out. Ukrainians are going through hell right now.
This Organized Chaos video is brought to you by Jim's Art Studio. Jim's Art Studio is an online store that allows access to prints that you can use for most anything, obviously as just a picture, or as a wallpaper, or as a bookmark, or anything you can think of. You can find Jim's Art Studio at etsy.com/shop/Jim's Art Studio. This video is also brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello again. I keep on thinking, hey, I have this backlog of videos. I should go ahead and edit them and put them out rather than make new videos. But then I found out about a new super cringe video and I think, oh god, I should probably reply to that and get that out sooner rather than focus on the backlog. Because the backlog is usually stuff that's been out for a little bit. So it's not going to be as timely. So we are going to be returning to my most popular of these reaction videos. We're going to be returning to Jimmy Dore. Which, fun fact, that video that I did a while ago, about a month ago, when the Russia-Ukraine war started, it has been ratioed pretty completely, but it's also gotten more views than most any video I've posted on here in a while. But what I find most shocking about that is the number of people who, not only do I get ratioed, number of people who are arguing against me in that video, talk about how wrong I am. I think it's interesting because even though all those things are happening, as time has gone by, even though I am less knowledgeable about the exact events that happened in Ukraine than Jimmy appears to be, or Aaron Mate, or anybody he talks about in that video, they are objectively wrong and I'm objectively right in the end. Even though they know more about the situation than I do, clearly. It's insane. I've learned more since then. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But everything I've learned has caused me to look back at what I said in that video and said, oh, so my conclusion was fucking right. I just didn't know how right it was. It's insane. You can look at the history of the Donbasseries, and you can look at the history of the Maidan coup. You can look at the history of Crimea. Sure, and it will tell you why things end up here. But to look at exactly, like, who the bad guy is, and I kind of hate to use that term, but I feel like it kind of fits here, who the bad guy is in this situation. In order to really, explain the situation the best way, I'm going to use an analogy. Let's say you meet somebody, and this person says, hey, I have a neighbor who just got a restraining order against me. You might think, whoa, that's crazy, that seems extreme. But at the end of the day, one person has a restraining order against one other person, you don't really know what's up. Could be one person an asshole, could be another person an asshole, you don't know. However, let's say you meet somebody. That person says, oh man, it's crazy. Did you know all my neighbors have a restraining order against me? All of them. You hear that story, you're going to be thinking, whoa, what's wrong with this fucker? Because, yeah, that tells you there's something wrong with that guy. Now, what does it tell you? Taking that story in consideration, what does it tell you when you have a country like Russia and all of Russia's neighbors want to join NATO, essentially the Let's Defend Against Russia pact? That tells you there's something up with Russia. That tells you Russia is fucking around with their neighbors. I don't think it's that complex. But you know what? We aren't going to delay too much longer because let's go ahead and get to this Jimmy Dore video. Caught my interest. We're going to be watching U.S. media pushes war crime propaganda. Sure. Let's see what he has to say.
Did you see this where Joe Biden is now calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal. Let me show you. Here we
You
go.
may remember I got criticized for calling Putin a war criminal. Well, the truth of the matter, you saw what happened in Bucha. This warrants him, he is a war criminal. But we have to gather the information. We have to continue to provide Ukraine with the weapons they need to continue the fight.
So yeah, Putin invading Ukraine is a war crime. Just like the U.S. invading Iraq was a war crime. Putin invading Ukraine is a war crime. End of story. So he's a war criminal. Whether or not he did what happened in Bucha, and I'm sure we're going to get into that, and I'll do live research right here. We'll see what we can figure out. But even push that aside, invading Ukraine is enough for me to consider him a war criminal. I don't think it's far stretch.
Right? And we have to gather all the detail so this can be have a war crime trial. This guy is brutal, and what's happening in Bucha is outrageous, and everyone's seen it. No, I think it is.
I like that. He's just shaking his head, but he's not saying anything. What the fuck, Jimmy? What's on your fucking mind?
It's a war crime.
What are you going to do about it, sir? Are you going to do more sanctions on Russia?
I'm seeking more sanctions, yes. I'll have time to announce that.
So there he is calling him a war criminal and saying we got to get the evidence so we can prosecute this guy. But the venue where war criminals are tried is the International Criminal Court in The Hague, which the United States has steadfastly refused to join out of fear of having its own officials tried and held accountable there. That's why so many of them are on Twitter and in cable green rooms. That's the irony.
Okay. Does that not make Putin a war criminal? Okay. U.S. has done war crimes. I already said that. Does that not make Putin a war criminal? Because U.S. has done war crimes, other people are allowed... what the fuck? What's your point?
George Bush would be prosecuted as a war criminal. Joe Biden supported full-throated the Iraq war, which was a war crime. And, of course, all the things that go along with it, torture and all that other stuff. He didn't prosecute any of the people who did it and maintained a torture facility for his whole vice presidency on Guantanamo Bay. So the United States are the biggest records and war crimers going right now. And that's why it's ironic. And so what they're talking...
I mean, we're big. I mean, Russia is giving us room for our money. I don't know who is actually bigger because Russia's been doing war crimes too. I mean, I don't know. We are a lot bigger. So maybe we're doing more war crimes, but Russia seems to be up there. It's possible for us to do war crimes and for Russia to do war crimes. I mean, is his whole argument just going to be, oh, U.S. does war crimes? Because yes, U.S. does do war crimes. Does that mean Russia is then allowed to do war crimes as well?
About, Aaron, is they're talking about this. This is from the Defense of Ukraine. It has the blue check, and it says, News, Srebrenica, the Ukrainian city of Bucha, was in the hands of the animals, Russian animals, for several weeks. Local civilians were being executed arbitrarily, some with hands tied behind their backs, their bodies scattered in the streets of the city. So this is being reported as fact, that Russia was shooting unarmed citizens with their hands tied behind their back and then left them in the streets. This is what they're reporting as fact.
Well, this is also Ukrainian defense. Of course they're going to report that.
Now, this makes about as much sense as the Assad gassing his own people as he's winning the war. It doesn't make any...
Wait, why wouldn't this make sense? We're talking about Russia's invading Ukraine and committing war crimes against the people. How does that not make sense? And also, does war have to make sense? War typically doesn't make a whole lot of sense, Jimmy. Are you looking for the logic in people fucking killing each other?
Any sense that Assad would do that, and that's why Aaron Matei debunked those gas attack conspiracy theories that was spread by the CIA and the mainstream news media. Here it says Russia claims Bucha...
Okay, I don't care. We're talking about Bucha. What about Bucha?
Civilian massacre was faked as a provocation as outrage builds over Ukraine war atrocities. So This is from Moon of Alabama.
Okay, so your two stories. Number one, Ukraine saying they were war crimes, and Russia saying they were faked. And I like how you read it. You read it like, they're saying this is fact. Ukraine's saying this is fact. And you're so dismissive. But yet you're reading this headline, the headline of CBS This Morning, talking about the Russia thing. You're saying it so matter-of-factly. Like, of course. Gee whiz, Jimmy, showing your bias much?
Outrage builds over Ukraine war atrocities. So this is from Moon of Alabama. They tweeted out Russian troops on March 30th.
What the fuck is Moon of Alabama? U.S. intelligence folks tell their stenographers at NBC News that their obvious lies are obvious. Okay. What the fuck is this website? Where's info? What is this? Sharon Shim Award for Uncompromised Integrity in Journalism, where barflies get together? Okay, about this site. Okay. Our site's purpose is to discuss politics, economics, philosophy, and blogger Bill Munn's whiskey bar writings. Moon of Alabama was opened as an independent open forum for members of the whiskey bar community? What the fuck? Oh, it's closed down. That's helpful. That's super helpful. I mean, I don't... What is this? Okay, let's look up their Twitter. Well, 28,000 followers, sure. U.S. intelligence says its intelligence is bullshit. Okay, source. I mean, this begins immediately with the Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction thing. What does this have to do with Bucha? Okay, the Bucha provocation. The Bucha Russian atrocities propaganda onslaught may have been worked well in the West, but it lacks evidence that Russia had anything to do with it. Former Indian ambassador calls it an outright fake. India rolls out red carpet for Russian foreign minister. The West has warned India of consequences if it helps Moscow circumvent sanctions, but this has not gone down well in Delhi. The diplomat. So it honestly looks like India has a pretty big relationship with Russia. And just doing a superficial look here, they have a huge relationship with them, and they haven't been willing to really stop during the Ukraine thing. So them saying it looks fake, of course, they have a motivation to say it looks fake. Let's just get to what Jimmy's going to say. Okay.
Russian troops leave Bucha. On March 31st, the mayor of Bucha announces the town was liberated and makes no mention of atrocities. Then, on April 1st and 2nd, Azov Nazis enter Bucha. And then on April 3rd, they publish all the Russian atrocities. So they're seeming to say that it was the Nazis that did that. Now, if you know anything about how this war started, it started with the United States.
Okay. Russian troops leave Bucha. March 30th. No source listed. That's really fucking helpful. Mayor of Bucha announces town liberated, makes no mention of atrocities. Ukrinformnet. Okay, let's look that up. Oh God, he doesn't list the full... Does he put it in his... No, he's... Oh my God, Jimmy, you make this... Is this Are you... Okay. April 3rd, they tweet this. Let's see if they have sources in their thing. Okay, here we go. The mayor of Bucha in the Kiev region, Anatoly Frog, state the town has been liberated from Russian troops. So they left Bucha on the 31st, according to Ukraine. This is April 3rd. We're looking at the atrocities. What are they accusing him of? As of Nazis entered Bucha, according to the New York Times article. Bucha, growing evidence. Harsher sanctions. Bucha, in Bucha, a newly liberated suburb northwest of the capital, residents were still finding bodies in yards and roadways days after Russian troops withdraw. So, this is still them finding stuff. A man in a bright blue fleece lace hunched over a steering wheel of a crutch car in an intersection in the center of town. Another man lay on his back beside the road, a large bullet hole in the back of his head. Okay. So, this is them finding stuff. So, they chased the Russians out, and then they're finding stuff. Okay, so this Moon of Alabama says, Azov Nazis entered Bucha in 1-2. And this is their source. So let's look for Azov. Alright, so these are the Azov guys in Bucha. Okay. Okay, so I hate the Azovs too. I hate neo-Nazis. Getting that out of the way. I hate that they're involved because it muddies the waters so much because they just love pointing it out. That being said, the story appears to be fairly cut and dry. Russians invaded Bucha. Then Ukrainians were able to chase them out, liberate Bucha, and now they're still sifting through the wreckage, which will happen because it's a fucking war. This whole tweet is designed to make it look like the Azovs did it. What would make more sense? The Russians committing war crimes against Ukraine, or Azov going in there, killing their own people to say they can commit that Russia committed war crimes? What would make more sense?
States helping overthrow the democratically elected government of Ukraine with the help of neo-Nazis that started firing on people in the Maidan Square. And we now know.
Whoa, we just rewound 8 years. Holy shit, what'd we miss? Okay.
They publish all the Russian atrocities. So they're seeming to say that it was the Nazis that did that. Now, if you know anything about how this war started, it started with the United States helping overthrow the democratically elected government of Ukraine with the...
Okay, so that election for the president, I don't remember his name, the Russian puppet, was very fuzzy. How did the U.S. help? All right, so John McCain did go to Ukraine. He went to Kiev and showed solidarity with the Euromaidan activists. Okay, so Victoria Nuland here, Assistant Secretary of State for Europe and Eurasian Affairs. What she did was she went to Maidan and handed out cookies to the demonstrators. This is hardcore shit right here. Is this like sarcasm? Because it keeps on saying the extent of the Obama administration meddling in Ukraine's politics was breathtaking. But it's like, it's milquetoast. Like, what they did in the Maidan Square was minimal. Okay, this is annoying, because I feel like this article is trying to say U.S. had major involvement, but it doesn't say much. Like, it says, John McCain went to visit them, and Victoria Nuland here handed out fucking cookies. And then they're implying there's backroom shit going on. But that's it. That's it. That's what started the Maidan coup. And they ousted their president, who's still alive, by the way. Rumor has it he's set up to be installed as the new president of Ukraine if Russia takes Ukraine, which is not looking good. So they ousted him and democratically elected their president. Yeah, it was violent, as uprisings frequently are. But I mean, unless it was the sugar rush from the cookies that inspired it. What's your point, Jimmy?
Help of neo-Nazis that started firing on people in the Maidan Square. And we now know that's what happened. It wasn't the president of Ukraine firing on his own people. It was the far-right neo-Nazis doing that to provoke a coup.
Oh my God, how much shit you're gonna throw at me here? Okay, how much shit do I have to figure? Yeah, part of the reason why it was happening was because the president was refusing to sign a trade agreement with the European Union, and the people wanted him to, and instead he just wanted to stick with Russia, which the people didn't want him to. Large barricaded protest outcries, clashes between Kiev, between protesters and special right police. So 108 deaths. So clashes between Kiev and protesters and Burkat special right police resulted in the deaths of 108 protesters and 13 police officers, wounding many others. I'm not even seeing, like, neo-Nazis, Asimov. Where is he getting neo-Nazis from? Azov C. No, Azov Battalion has nothing to do with this. So he's calling Asimov Battalion, and it seems like the police that were involved with the riot, he's calling them both Nazis, implying that they're the same group when it's not.
And so here, they seem to be implying that that's what the Azov Nazis were doing. They are doing a false flag, committing atrocities, and blaming it on Russia. And in fact, this is from the New York. It says, Ukraine's defense ministry posted a video early Sunday and accused Russian forces of executing civilians in a suburb of the capital where bodies in civilian clothes dotted the streets in the wake of the Russian withdrawal. In the footage, 3 bodies in civilian clothing are seen clustered on the side of a road in a suburb, Bucha. A white cloth binds the hands of one body behind its back, and a dried pool of blood spreads out from the head. Local civilians were being executed arbitrarily, some with hands tied behind their backs. The ministry wrote in a tweet accompanied the video. The statement added that the scenes were a new Srebrenica, a reference to a 1995 massacre during the Bosnian War. Russian officials did not immediately respond to the allegations. The New York Times was unable to independently verify the assertions by Ukraine Defense Ministry and other officials. So this looks like garbage again, and here's what Michael...
No, it looks like something happened, and New York Times just doesn't have enough information to say we definitely know this is what happened. I mean, logically, what makes more sense? Russia committed war crimes while they were at war, or Ukraine killed their own people to make it look like Russia was doing war crimes? I mean, Ukraine is already winning the publicity war. They don't need to kill their own people to continue winning it.
Tracy tweeted out, he says, MSNBC did zero original reporting to corroborate any aspect of these events. They just showing video and tweets provided by Ukraine government officials, but that hasn't stopped NBC's host Ali Velshi from declaring genocide and repeating his insane call for NATO intervention. And I just want to show you this. Ali Velshi actually tweeted this out. This remarkable New York Times investigation using satellite imagery disproves the Russian claim, amplified by U.S. conspiracy theorists, that somehow Ukrainians themselves killed or planted the dead bodies discovered in Bucha. So this is the New York Times did their own investigation, and the New York Times is confirming this to be true. The New York Times. Now, let's remember, Aaron, the last time the New York Times confirmed a war crime that the United States wanted them to confirm. I don't know if you remember what it was, but it was the chemical attack in Syria. And so what...
Oh my God, we're back to Syria. I want to look into Ukraine, dude. Yes, okay, New York Times doesn't always get the story right. New York Times is not great. I gotcha.
What did the New York Times do? They created a pretend digital version of what happened. What they did was they imagined what it looked like, and then they got some graphics made. It said how we created a virtual crime scene to investigate serious chemical attack. And they got it 100% wrong. They got it 100% wrong. And here it is. How we created a virtual crime scene to investigate.
Are we going to get to Ukraine? So yeah, they got the Syria thing wrong. I'll give you that, because I haven't researched it. I'm really suspicious of you, Jimmy. I think you're probably at least partially full of shit on this. But I'll give you credit on this. What about the Ukraine investigation? What about that?
Investigate Syria. There it is. It was all bullshit. So could you, let me bring in Aaron. Well, let me show you one more thing before I have you comment on this. Here's Max Blumenthal's tweeting out a gray zone report that says new witness testimony about the Mariupol maternity hospital airstrike follows a pattern of Ukrainian deceptions. So they were saying that the Russians were bombing a hospital with a maternity ward in it, and that was a war crime, and it was getting people upset. Gray Zone did a little investigating, and it turns out that story's bogus, and it following a pattern just like this recent story. Reports of Russian massacre of scores of civilians in the town of Bucha also contains suspicious details suggesting a pattern of information manipulation aimed at triggering Western military intervention.
Okay. So what he's saying is that Gray Zone did some investigation, and they're calling BS on the Associated Press's investigation. By the way, the Associated Press and Reuters are like the two most respected journalism sources available now. Like, they are top tier. I'm not saying they're perfect, because nothing's perfect, but they are fucking top tier. And fucking Gray Zone is calling them out. You know what? Let's look into the Gray Zone a little bit. The Gray Zone has been criticizing for defending authoritarian regimes. Kind of like what Russia is right now, huh? In March 2020, the English Wikipedia formerly oh my god. So Wikipedia will not allow the Gray Zone to be used as a facts in an article. Wow. So Gray Zone is saying AP is wrong. I'm going to say Gray Zone is full of fucking shit.
And here's the bogus story of the Russia bombing the hospital with the maternity wards. And then here it is. Now that she's telling the truth that the hospital wasn't targeted by Russia and the Ukrainian military used the mothers as human shields, stealing their food, Western media has downgraded Mariana to just a blogger. So now they're going, Ukraine blogger video fuels false info on Mariupol bombing. So now she's gone from a hero to just a blogger. So let me bring in...
Oh my god. Why do I always have to look into this and it's all Jimmy manipulating stuff? Mariupol. A wounded pregnant woman who was taken to a stretcher from maternity. A wounded pregnant woman who was taken on a stretcher from a maternity hospital that was bombed by Russia last week has died along with her baby, the Associated Press has learned. So there's an AP journalist here. AP, Ukraine blogger. Okay, I want to find that article. Okay, so it seems like this blogger is doing weird stuff. But the thing to keep in mind is that about that maternity hospital being bombed, that was the AP reporting it because the AP was there. They have people there. Yeah, they weren't there when it was being bombed, but they saw the after effects. They saw a maternity hospital bombed. These were photos shot by the AP. So these are not like they're tangentially connected, but one does not disprove the other. Jimmy,
Aaron, and go ahead and take it where you will.
So. Yes, in terms of the allegations about what happened in Bucha, the Times has just come out. I haven't read the story yet, but apparently what they did is they looked at satellite footage that matches bodies in the streets of Bucha to dates well before the Russians left, which means that these people were killed while Russia was there. Which means that,
Okay.
look, if these images are accurate, then it's quite possible that the allegation is correct, that Russia committed war crimes. There's no, war crimes happen in war, and it's awful. But unfortunately, the way this is being treated is then this would be grounds to accuse Russia of genocide or to intervene militarily, as people like Ali Belshi want. It's ridiculous. You can go back and look at the U.S., look at the Haditha massacre inside Iraq. Awful massacres, war crimes committed by the U.S. And there's many more examples of that.
You see, I wish they could just talk about the Russia-Ukraine thing without bringing up other stuff. Because you know what? Every major country in the world has done war crimes. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. But let's talk about the Russia-Ukraine Bucha thing. Can we focus on that, please?
Inside Ukraine, and people forget about this, but what started this war, as you mentioned, back in 2014, one of the key incidents was dozens of Ukrainians who were against the coup being burned alive in the Odessa massacre in May of 2014.
Odessa massacre. Okay, let's double check this one now. I mean, they're talking about the Maidan coup now. We're jumping ahead a couple months later. When was the beginning of this war, really? I mean, I like to argue the war begins when Russia invades, but yay, you know what, whatever. Maybe it began because Ukraine didn't want a Russian puppet as president. How shitty of them, huh? Alright, so the anti-Russian pro-Maidan group in Ukraine had a 5,000-strong protest in the anti-Maidan, which I'm going to go ahead and assume that is largely Russian-backed, because the evidence would suggest that. They were very pro-Russian. Reports about the precise sequence of events that followed vary between different sources, including several confirmed fake reports being spread through social networks. While defending the buildings, militants on roof tossed rocks and petrol bombs at the protesters below. A report by Ukrainian Independent Information Agency said that the pro-Maidan crowd began throwing petrol bombs into the building after having been fired upon by the pro-Russian group. Said that the situation was unclear, with multiple sources indicating that both sides had been throwing petrol bombs at each other. One eyewitness told the BBC that fire started on the third floor when a petrol bomb was thrown at a closed window from inside the building. And the Kiev Post reported that several flaming bottles held by Ukrainian unity activists outside were thrown into the front entrance and through the windows on the second and fourth floors. An official investigation conducted by U.S. Ukrainian Interior Minister stated that while no firearms were found inside the building, those on the roof were shooting at the crowd below and accidentally set the building on fire whilst throwing petrol bombs from above. One of the pro-Maidan protesters who was shot non-fatally by a sniper from the trade union's buildings was Andrei Kasanov, a Russian citizen and Euromaidan activist. Regardless of who started the fire, it is known that it started on the second and third floors of the building. Quickly sped firefighters were slow to respond, arriving an hour after the fire began. 13 units of fire and rescue apparatus were sent to the scene, but were prevented from operating because of the large number of people gathered outside the building. 50 pro-Russian activists remained on the roof, barricading themselves in and refusing to leave. Some of those who tried to escape the fire were set upon and beaten during their attempts to flee by some Ukrainian unity demonstrators, while other demonstrators saved several dozen people in their rooms on the second and third floor. Some outside the building chanted, "Burn, Caldras, burn," referring to a derogatory term for a pro-Russian activist who wears a ribbon of St. George. Pro-Maidan unity protesters said that no one in Odessa's pro-Maidan movement knew the people were seen chanting such slogans. Okay, this sounds terrible. It sounds like they are both being shitty with each other, and the problem was the pro-Russian guys were in a building. The anti-Russian guys were outside a building. Shit went down. Sounds bad. How is he describing this?
of that. Even inside Ukraine, and people forget about this, but what started this war, as you mentioned back in 2014, one of the key incidents was dozens of Ukrainians who were against the coup.
Dozens. Against 5,000.
Being burned alive in the Odessa massacre in May of 2014.
Wow, he's being really vague there. Not talking about how they're logging bombs at each other and how, like, some people got trapped in the building. It's not even clear who threw the bomb that set them on fire. Nice work, dude.
And that helped trigger this awful war for the last 8 years. No one cares about that atrocity because the victims are on the wrong side. They're on the side that we're against, so we're not supposed to care about them. So if war crimes happen here...
Wow, I like the way he's phrasing it. Yeah, no, that was bad, but they were doing it to each other. They were plugging bombs at the pro-Maidan people. The pro-Maidan people were throwing bombs at the other side. And some people died. Shit happens. I mean, it's not good. Everybody would love if, you know, a government could be overthrown peacefully, but obviously that wasn't happening.
They should be investigated and prosecuted. And if Russia is guilty, then they should face every consequence for that. What's interesting is a few things. First of all, Russia is accused.
Yeah, if Russia is guilty, yeah. I think a lot of the problem I have right now is lots of people in power are not facing consequences. And I'm not talking about fucking Will Smith because he is facing some consequences for a fucking slap. I'm talking about, like, real people of power doing real illegal things and just getting away with it.
Ukraine and making false allegations. So they called for a UN Security Council meeting today to address this. That proposal was shot down. The UK and the US were very much against it. If you believe Russia is guilty here, why would you not want to have a public meeting about it and present your evidence? The other thing that should be happening is...
Oh, God damn it. Why do I have to double check all this shit? Because they're just lying. I know he's lying. First of all, Russia
has accused Ukraine of making false allegations. So they called for a UN Security Council meeting today to address this. That proposal was shot down. The UK...
Oh, so Russia called for a UN Security Council to look into this. Yeah. I'm not even going to look into that. So, of course, they would say no, because Russia's committing a war. They're doing a war crime. This whole war is a war crime. The whole thing is a war crime. Period. So while they're saying, I'm all for investigating it, I'm not for having Russia in charge of the investigation. Fuck that.
UK and the US were very much against it. If you believe Russia is guilty here, why would you not want to have a public meeting about it and present your evidence?
Yeah, I'm all for a public meeting. But you know what? Russia can go fuck itself right now. I'm sorry. Putin is running Russia. He's arresting people who protest against him. RT's been gutted, apparently. Yeah, I know. You've told me his poll numbers are going up. And of course, when you arrest people who are against you, yeah, your poll numbers are going to go up. Yeah. Yeah. Russia's sucking right now. And I mean that primarily because of what Putin's doing. This is Putin's war. Putin's doing this. He's having his people going out and doing terrible things.
The other thing that should be happening is those bodies should be immediately collected by independent investigators who are actually in Ukraine right now from the International Criminal Court, so you can determine when they were killed.
All right, so independent investigators collecting the bodies and getting reports. Yeah, I'm actually assuming that is being done. Hopefully it is being done. Yeah, do you know it's not being done? He's kind of acting like it's not being done, and I don't know it's not being done. It's going to take time to get those results. We aren't going to know instantly.
That is something that forensic pathologists can do. By the way, an area of expertise that was deliberately shunned in the OPCW's Duma investigation because they did not want to find out when the victims there were actually killed. But that's something that could happen right now, and everybody should support, is getting forensic pathologists to the scene to determine when these bodies were killed, when these victims were killed, because that will help determine a very key piece of evidence. And there also is, yes, as you mentioned,
So,
if we are
but
going to treat it,
Aaron,
yeah.
does it make any military sense that Russia, which is in the process of completely rolling over Ukraine, like everyone knows, would do that?
Completely rolling over Ukraine? They're not doing well. They were supposed to roll over Ukraine. Jimmy, they were supposed to roll over Ukraine. They didn't. They're falling back now.
No, but that doesn't mean that.
That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but that it doesn't make. But it doesn't make sense. Just like the gas attack from Assad in Syria didn't.
Fuck! Shut up about the Syria thing. We're talking about Ukraine, Jimmy. Ukraine! It's an entirely different fucking country.
Make any sense, right?
Right, but the difference
Okay.
is that a chemical attack would have to be ordered at the highest level inside Syria. An atrocity, a war crime, could be committed by
Right.
forces.
But we do know the Azov Battalion are real Nazis, and they commit atrocities like that.
Yes, Azov are Nazis, and I hate them. You know who else has Nazis in their military? Russia has Nazis in their military. The United States has Nazis in their military. There are Nazis in pretty much any military you can think of. If you can find a military without a Nazi, good job. Congratulations. That military is doing much better than pretty much everybody else. It's unfortunately probably a military of a dozen people, but you know what? You gotta start somewhere. But yeah, there are Nazis all over the place. Stop hyper-focusing on Ukraine Nazis. For fuck's sake, I'm getting sick of it. Every country has Nazis. You don't get to invade a country just because it has fucking Nazis.
Absolutely, and people like the Azov Battalion burn people alive. And,
So it's
desolate.
more likely. Do you think it's more likely that the Azov?
People like the Azov Battalion burn people alive in Odessa. We don't know that. Where did you read that? I like how he just throws that in there with no fucking evidence. What's your source on that one, Aaron Mate? Can I look it up? I think you're just going to throw that in there.
Battalion did that, and as a false flag, or do you think it's more likely? Which do you think is more likely?
I'm not going to weigh in either way. What I think is allegations like this should be.
I like how he's laughing because it's clearly the Azov Battalion. What do you think's more likely? Russia committed war crimes against Ukraine while they were invading Ukraine, or Ukraine committed war crimes against themselves? Which is more likely?
Be investigated, and a very key piece of information to find out is get forensic pathologists in there and determine when they were killed. That will clear up a very key piece of evidence. Now, we should say about the times. Their satellite images may be correct here. And if they're correct, then that's a very key piece of evidence that these bodies were there before Russia withdrew. But let's also remember, as you point out, the same Times visual investigation team did a bogus, quote unquote, investigation of Duma using fancy animation to make it.
Listen, nobody is perfect. If you do something for long enough, you're going to end up with mistakes. And I swear, they're so specific. If he said, hey, this New York Times crew that did this, well, I did research and I found out 75% of the time they did their stories, they're wrong. That would be something. But when you nitpick one specifically, no, just tell me the reliability of this story. You're obviously just everybody's gonna have fuck ups. Everybody's gonna have fuck ups.
Look as if they had proved that gas cylinders were dropped from Syrian military helicopters.
Shut up about Syria. Fuck.
Well, what happened after their investigation came out, we got leaks from the OPCW showing an extensive investigation was done by OPCW experts on the ground in Duma who reached an opposite conclusion. One inspector actually concluded that the canisters there were manually placed.
So apparently Syria and Ukraine are the same fucking country for some reason. I don't fucking know. They keep on bringing this shit up. I legit don't even know what to say about it. It's just, they keep on bringing up Syria. It's like, can we talk about Ukraine? I swear half this video has been about fucking Syria.
To date, the New York Times has never responded or even acknowledged the OPCW leaks. So if the Times...
We're talking about Ukraine. fuck?
Was actually confident in its investigation of Duma, it would make the case as to why these veteran OPCW inspectors who went to Duma were wrong. But they haven't done that for obvious reasons. Their video was junk science. It was done to promote a narrative. So everything they say, I think, should be taken with skepticism, but it doesn't mean they're wrong.
Hey, at least they can still be used as a source on Wikipedia, unlike fucking Gray Zone.
On here.
Here's what. So when you build up that kind of emotion, so this is called manufacturing consent for war. So that's what this. So when the corporate news is reporting the atrocities committed by Russia and then tells you nothing about how we got this war started, that it was provoked by NATO, that there's an easy solution to end this.
Okay, so as far as I can tell, what would be the easy solution to end this? Zelensky roll over and let Putin just conquer? That's the easy solution at this point, Jimmy. You think that's what they should do?
And that United States, NATO, and Zelensky in Ukraine are dragging this out. It could be over. They're not telling you.
Yeah, they could just roll over and let Putin win, but they don't want to, because they don't want to be part of Russia. They want to be independent, which is why they're at fucking war right now. Are they not allowed to be independent, Jimmy? Are they supposed to roll over to Putin just because Putin says so? Is that what they're supposed to do? What?
Any of that. What they're focusing on is propaganda that talks about war crimes, so you get emotionally involved, and you'll want the United States to go to war, and you'd be willing to pay $7 gas prices to put a hurt on Putin, but you're not. You're putting a hurt on working people in the United States while enriching the fossil fuel companies. You're doing nothing to Putin. Because right now, Putin is about to step on the petrodollar, which is going to screw the United States economy. And this is all being done by Joe Biden, the Democrats, and the fossil fuel companies.
So he's not 100% wrong. Okay, so Putin is kind of getting screwed by this, depending on how many of the sanctions we've actually enacted. But the problem is we have the fuel companies and guys like that who are acting like the prices are going way out of hand. Oh my God, the prices are so expensive. We get 4% of our fuel from Russia. We don't really need them. We can cut them out drastically and be fine. The whole machine, it's the corporation, it's the gas companies that are raising prices because they can hype this up. As for consent to war, it's only manufacturing consent if it's fake. That's the issue. Manufacturing consent requires that you're faking this stuff. If it's real, then it's just shit that happens, Jimmy.
So this is what it leads to. Listen to this crazy pro-war propaganda. Now, let's remember what the corporate news is there to do. They're there to manufacture consent. And right now, today, they're manufacturing consent for war. And here's how they did it.
Hey, look, I know what this means. I know what I'm saying. I served for 25 years. I served to protect the innocent. We are the leaders of the free world. So, yes, and my wife still serves. I don't speak for her, but I'm ready to commit at this moment, unlike I was before this day, to put people in direct contact with Russia, to stop Russia. Call it peacekeeping, call it what you will. We have to do more than provide weapons. And by we, I mean the United States. Yes, we're going to do it as a coalition with lots of other people, but we are the example. So put boots on the ground, send weapons directly at Russia. This is a massacre. This is a special kind of evil. Hey, look, I know.
And does that scare you to hear stuff, that kind of strong propaganda on corporate news right now, Aaron?
I mean, I disagree with that guy. I don't think we should be attacking Russia directly. But what Russia is doing is wrong. It is a war crime. Just like when the U.S. invaded Iraq, that's a war crime and I was against it. Now Russia's invading Ukraine. That's a war crime, and I'm against it. Ukraine, as a country, has a right to be a country without Russia annexing Crimea and installing Russian puppets as president and instilling unrest in the Donbass region by pushing insurgents in there, making their borders unstable so they can't join NATO when they want to. Russia is fucking with it's. And if you look at it's the exact same playbook they did on Georgia, and now they're just doing it on Ukraine. All of Russia's neighbors want to join NATO. That tells you Russia's the asshole here. I'm not saying the U.S. has never been an asshole. The U.S. has been an asshole lots of times. I'm not going to look into Syria because I just want to focus on Ukraine. God, these guys spend half the time talking about fucking Syria. But yeah, Russia keeps on... Russia's neighbors are either Russian puppets like Belarus, joining NATO, or getting invaded by Russia. That seems to be the three options if you're neighboring Russia right now. It seems like a pretty shitty situation to be in.
It's open advocacy for World War III, but this is where we've been headed all along. This is what these people have been clamoring for. And again, they talk about being willing to deploy U.S. troops. These are people that are not going to be fighting. Although this guy has a wife, he says, that's in the military. So maybe he's okay with her being sent off to war to die for what? This theoretical idea of not letting Russia dictate who can join NATO, even if it's a country on their borders and where a country that...
Yes, Russia shouldn't dictate who can join NATO. They shouldn't. If Russia doesn't want its neighbors to join NATO, then maybe it should go to its neighbors and say, hey, we really like it if you don't join NATO. Let's work together. What do we need to do to help you out so that you don't feel like you need to join NATO? Maybe Russia should go to their neighbors and say something like that instead of fucking invading.
That Russia has deep ties to. It's insane. But it's not pundits on TV or news anchors who pay the price of these wars. It's foremost Ukrainians who are being used as cannon fodder. And there's all this talk about...
They're being used as cannon fodder? They're defending their country.
We have to defend Ukraine's right to join NATO. Polls up until the war showed that Ukraine was still very, very divided over NATO membership. There's not an overwhelming...
They were divided? Last I saw, they were very overwhelming for it before the war. All right. Since June 2014, polls showed about 50% of those asked support Ukrainian NATO membership. Some 69% of Ukrainians want to join NATO according to June 2017. So in 2017, it was at 69%. That is not middle ground, dude. That is largely in favor.
The majority of Ukrainians who want to be joining NATO, for understandable reasons, they understand it would actually create risk for Ukraine because it raises confrontation with this nuclear...
But they wanted to join NATO. Why should their wishes be ignored? Why should their wishes be ignored just because Putin doesn't want them to? If Putin doesn't want them to, then give them another option, dude. Besides fucking invasion.
Armed behemoth on their border. So why would they want that? But those Ukrainians are ignored, and we're instead supposed to listen to only those who share the views of
Are we supposed to be? Aren't we pro-democracy here? Is this channel not pro-democracy? Because 69% were pro-NATO. In a democratic system, they should be joining NATO then. That's democracy.
Agenda of neocons in Washington. It's nuts.
And so if you're going to... So the problem with people in corporate news who validate their own bias, and it's always pro-war, it's always whatever this CIA establishment is saying, is that if you're going to tweet this out and say, hey, the New York Times just confirmed this, you also have to give context. Like, let's remember the last time they confirmed something like that, it was 100% made up. So let's not...
Was that the last time? I'm sure New York Times has confirmed a lot of things since then. I bet you New York Times... I have my issues with the New York Times. Lots of issues with the New York Times. But I'm willing to bet they're right more often than they're wrong. They're right a hell of a lot more often than you are, Jimmy. How many times do I fact check you in this one goddamn video?
Remember the last time they confirmed something like that, it was 100% made up. So let's not rush to conclusions. Like, that would be a responsible way to report that instead of reporting it as fact. Let's remember that the first casualty in war is the truth. And let's quit. And so what this is this gets you worked up emotionally, so you'll be for more war. And then Ali brings on that guy who says he's ready. He's a freedom. He's out there defending freedom. And he's willing to go do it right now with Russia. And this is a massacre, and we got to do it. And that's called manufacturing consent for war. And that's what the mainstream news does. I have friends who think only Fox News does that, but that is done just as vehemently, even more so maybe, at CNN, MSNBC, and all the other networks.
I wouldn't say it's done more so, but yeah, sure, it's done there. But what's that have to do with what's going on in Bucha? Ukraine was invaded by Russia, and that's a war crime, and that's wrong. And you're like clouding it with all this other shit. I don't care what some talking head on MSNBC says. I disagree with him. I don't want the U.S. involved in this unless Russia's willing to push it that far. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't have been tempted to get Ukraine in NATO before this happened, but it is what it is now. Ukraine's doing great right now. They have our equipment, and they're kicking Russia out. Hopefully it keeps on going that way. Let's get Crimea back.
They're all manufacturing consent for war. They're all funded by Wall Street and the military-industrial complex, and they're all owned by the same handful of billionaires. Okay, so that you got to remind. And
I like how he's conflating all these issues. We're talking about Russia and Ukraine right now. Russia and Ukraine. Let's talk about billionaires are a problem. They're a big problem. We're talking about Russia, Ukraine. Syria, I don't even know what's going on in Syria. You spent so much of this video talking about fucking Syria. Has nothing to do with this.
So this is irresponsible. Of course, that's what the corporate...
How many times has New York Times verified a story and been right? I'm willing to bet you it's a huge amount. I'm willing to bet you like over 95%, possibly 99% of the time, when they verify a story, they're certain and it's correct. I'm willing to bet that. Even with my issue with New York Times, I'm willing to bet that's probably a pretty accurate assessment. A lot more accurate than you, Jimmy.
News does. They always take the pro-war line, and they dismiss anything, and they call people like Aaron and me, who debunk their pro-war conspiracies, they call us conspiracy theorists.
You haven't debunked anything. You're so full of shit. It's nice to know RT is still live on YouTube through your fucking channel, Jimmy.
That when Aaron was debunking, when Aaron joined me in debunking the Syrian gas attacks.
Shut up about Syria. Fuck.
It's true. I did join you. You were first.
I was out in front on that. When
you deserve a lot of credit for that, JD. You really do.
When he joined.
So obviously it's something Jimmy did specifically, and now they're like, oh, let's pat each other on the back. We did this one thing, so that means we can be wrong on this thing and be considered right. I don't even know if they were right before. I doubt they were, looking at the fact check here.
Me on that. We were both smeared roundly. Aaron, luckily, was given the I.F. Stone Award for independent journalism on that. But are there war crimes happening? Yes, I probably, and they're happening on both sides. And let's remember, the biggest war crimer is the United States. Well, I don't think.
Sure, Jimmy, but we're not at war right now. This is a war between Russia and Ukraine. Can we keep it on that, please? Yes, other people do bad things too. Whoop-de shit.
I think that's really debatable. That the biggest war crimer of the last 20 years has been the United States.
Nobody's debating that.
Hands down. I don't even think it's close. Look what we did to Iraq. Look what we did to Syria.
Russia's giving us a run for his money, but yeah, sure. Okay, I'll give you that. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with Bucha, Jimmy? What does that have to do with it?
Syria. Look what we did to Libya. Look at Somalia. Look at Yemen. We're helping us right now. We're occupying a third of Syria right now illegally. That's a war crime. That's a war of aggression. That's an illegal act. Also, we're helping facilitate a real genocide in Yemen right now. Nobody talks about that. But we're all supposed to focus on Ukraine because it's a fossil fuel war, and that's what...
Ugh, Jimmy. How many videos have you done on Yemen and Syria on your channel recently? I mean, I guess you can consider this kind of a video on fucking Syria. But let's look. Okay, you want to talk about Yemen? Let's look up your YouTube channel and look at how much you're talking about Yemen. So, you want to talk about what's going on in Yemen, but you haven't talked about Yemen for 3 goddamn years, Jimmy.
What they want you to focus on. Ali Velshi's bosses want him to focus on Ukraine and not focusing on Yemen or Somalia or Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, anything else. They want him to focus on that. That is what he focuses on, and he doesn't give you any context when he reports. I'm not picking on Ali Velshi. I'm just showing that as a typical example of a corporate news host, and he's from Canada.
And look, listen, Jimmy, again,
And I'll bet you money he's right a hell of a lot more often than you are.
We're stressing. It's quite possible these these specific war crimes allegations in Bucha are correct. But again, it's worth remembering that Ukrainian forces have also been credibly accused of committing war crimes. There's a video of Ukrainian soldiers Ukrainian forces asking for permission to shoot dead Russian captives, and that permission is given. So atrocities like this have happened on all sides. The answer for everyone is not to selectively choose.
Okay. April 7th, Reuters. This is today. Social media video verified by Reuters and geolocated to the area west of Kyiv appears to show Ukrainian forces shooting and killing a captured and badly wounded Russian soldier. 3 rounds were fired by an off-camera individual into the soldier, who is wearing one of the white armbands used by Russian forces. He is bleeding heavily, lying on the road besides a dead soldier, and appears to be breathing with difficulty. Look, he's still alive. He's wheezing already. It's finished, said a voice before 2 rounds are fired, and a third is fired after the soldier continues moving. I mean, that's bad. He might have been already mostly dead, though. Do we have something that's... I don't know. I don't want to give them credit, but yeah, I'm sure Ukrainians have done bad things to Russians during this. It's war. Let's not forget the big war crime. Russia invading.
Certain atrocities.
That's right.
Alleged atrocities.
And I think it's also worth noting that the Russians that the Ukrainians kill would be soldiers, because those would be the people in there, whereas the Ukrainians that the Russians are killing might be soldiers, but also civilians.
And clamor for war based on that. The answer is to call for an end to the war by all sides, and the only reasonable solution on the table is for Ukraine to accept neutrality.
Why does it have to? Why does it have to? Russia's withdrawing right now. Why does it have to agree to neutrality? It doesn't have to do that. It's its own independent country.
We live in a real world where these are the only options.
So you should just roll over when a bigger country wants to invade your country. A bigger country wants to invade your country. You should roll over. That's your argument. We live in the real world. They're going to take over anyway. Might as well roll over and give them what they want. That's your argument. Fuck that.
I personally wish Russia had not invaded. I think its grievances were legitimate. I wish it had handled them in a peaceful
I don't really give a shit about Russia's grievances. They invaded.
way, but they did. This is the situation we're in right now. And the answer to Russia's invasion is not to fuel it with more weapons and now these crazy calls for World War III.
So the answer to Russia's invasion is to roll over. It's to roll over. God damn.
The answer is to accept the options on the table, which include Ukraine not joining NATO, which Zelensky, as we talked about, has admitted he was told won't happen anyway. So why continue to destroy a country for the sake of something that everyone involved knows?
Yeah, it's a good point. Zelensky did say it's off the table, and yet, Putin is still fucking invading. Almost like he's just invading because he wants to fucking conquer it.
Will not actually happen in reality anyway.
Aaron Mate's been our guest. You can catch his work at...
Oh my god, that was so misleading. Jesus. And the way he read stuff and misled you and, like, treating Moon of Alabama as if it's, like, this big source. And Gray Zone. Fucking Gray Zone. You know, one thing I will tell you. New York Times is allowed to be cited on Wikipedia. Gray Zone is not. Ugh. Jesus Christ. Ugh. This makes my brain hurt. Yeah, this is outrageous misinformation. I can't believe I used to watch Jimmy Dore. I used to get annoyed because he would half-ass his stories, but now it feels like he's building whole narratives that are just flat out half-assed. It is frustrating and annoying. I think he's doing it for clicks. I mean, he's talking about, hey, no one's talking about Yemen, and there's terrible atrocities the U.S. is doing in Yemen. Look, he didn't talk about Yemen either. This is not a news channel. This is RT subsidiary, I swear. The very argument that Ukraine should just give up its sovereignty because Russia's bigger and they can't win, even though right now Ukraine's doing quite well. They might win. Unless Putin goes insane and does nuclear or chemical, which he's not allowed to do. Because then it is World War III. So we hope that doesn't happen. But the fact is, Jimmy Dore is just doing Russian propaganda. That's all that was. Talking about the Odessa massacre and not going into the specifics. Talking about it as if it was Asimov killing those people when that's not what the evidence shows. No wonder Gray Zone can't be used as a citation. Jesus Christ. So, yeah. Jimmy Dore. If this is like the last video, I'm going to end up with a lot of comments. Probably lots of people explaining to me about Syria. And guess what? I'm not going to read a single goddamn one of those. But go ahead and comment. Thank you. I don't care about Syria. I'm not going to research Syria right now because we're talking about Ukraine, Russia right now. This video is about Ukraine, Russia. It's about Buka. And it's just about him throwing all these facts to cloud your judgment when the truth is right there. It's right there. Now, do we know that Russia did war crimes in Buka? No. But it doesn't look good. It looks really bad. Based on the evidence we have, just looking at it, it looks bad. It looks bad. We'll know eventually, probably. But it looks bad.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.